So it turns out the George Floyd Derek Chauvin case is not yet over. New evidence has just been discovered, and it is going to absolutely infuriate you.
From the Associated Press that says the judge will now allow testing of tissue from George Floyd's heart as officer convicted of killing him seeks a new trial. A federal judge has just ruled that George Floyd's heart tumor must be tested to determine if it played a role in his death.
Certainly the very first legal win for Derek Chauvin, and we've been reporting all of it over here at Alpha News. But this is a federal judge who has finally come back approving this motion that has been in the works for months to examine heart tissue in George Floyd and also some fluids from George Floyd's body as well. And basically this is related to what's called a paraganglioma. This was discussed in the fall of Minneapolis. Some doctors came forward during Derek Chauvin's case to say, why wasn't this tumor tested in George Floyd? In many cases, it can lead to sudden cardiac death. They brought this information forward. His attorney at the time did not act upon this information according to court documents. And also the Judge Peter Cahill, ignored it as well. So in this motion, the judge has now said that this testing can take place. What really, does this tumor have anything to do with his death?
And obviously this is huge. I'd even say it's a bombshell because nobody knew about George Floyd's supposed heart tumor. In fact, none of this was even presented during Derek Chauvin's first trial. A medical finding as significant as a heart tumor wasn't even part of evidence. I mean, you gotta be freaking kidding me. The implications of this are massive. And I think, again, my personal opinion, what we're seeing in this case continues to shine a bright spotlight on just how deeply flawed this entire case was from the get-go. From my view, Derek Chauvin was never found guilty in a courtroom. He was found guilty in the court of public opinion. From the moment that video hit social media, it felt almost as if his fate was sealed, and that's what it felt like at the time when we were covering the trials and everything leading up. Whether you thought Derek Chauvin was innocent or guilty, it seemed as though everybody, whether or not they agreed on one thing, and that's that Derek Chauvin was going to be found guilty. He didn't stand a chance. You had the media, the activists, the politicians essentially all demanding a conviction before the trial even began. They had built this valuable narrative, and Derek Chauvin just, he had to fall on the sword is kind of what it felt like. It wasn't about facts, it was about social justice. But it felt...
I remember this very well. I would talk with friends, I would talk with people, and everybody wanted this man's head. They did not want to listen to the facts of the case. They didn't want to hear that this man didn't die till he got to the hospital. They did not want to hear that he had 10 times the lethal amount of drugs in his system. They didn't want to hear that in Minneapolis, at that time, the police were trained to put the knee onto the neck. That's how they were taught to detain during their academy. They didn't want to hear any of that. They just wanted this man behind bars. It is absolutely disgusting how public sentiment and public opinion got its way onto the jury, and then this man has been locked up ever since. Meanwhile, this dude was arrested time and time again. He beat up a pregnant woman. This person was not what the media told you. The media is wholly responsible for this man being behind bars right now. Because if the people on the jury just listen to the facts, there is not a chance in heck that he would be in prison right now.
I mean, remember the autopsies? There were 2 of them, by the way, one conducted by the county medical examiner and another independently funded one by Floyd's family. The county's autopsy found no evidence of asphyxiation or neck injuries. Instead, it pointed to Floyd's severe heart disease, fentanyl, and methamphetamine in his system as contributing factors. We all remember that autopsy. Let's put it up here on screen. This man had enough fentanyl and meth in his system to not just take down one man, but to probably take down a whole squad of men. Not to mention the body cam video of the actual incident itself.
Let me see your hands.
Damn, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please, Mr.
Both hands.
Do nothing.
Put your fucking hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
All right. What I do though? What do we do?
Put your hand up there. Put your hand up there.
And we just freeze frame on this shot right over here. It seems as though George Floyd had something in his mouth, and obviously the suggestion was, and it seems that there's evidence to back it up, that he ingested some of the illegal narcotics that were on his person or possibly within the vehicle in an effort to avoid charges. So basically, since day one, we've had conflicting medical opinions, but never did we have that honest conversation. No, the media just ran with the narrative that fit. And so what did they do? They picked the autopsy that backed their narrative and then just ran with it and and painted Derek Chauvin as a cold-blooded murderer. There's no proof of intent of malice or that he purposely did it, but none of that ever mattered. Even having the conversation never mattered. And now on top of all of it, we find out that George Floyd had a heart tumor? Yeah, this now changes everything. George Floyd had a cardiac tumor, which, let's be real, could very well have contributed to his passing. I did a little bit of basic research here, and medically speaking, a cardiac tumor can disrupt the heart's rhythm, reduce blood flow, and increase the sudden risk of death, especially when combined with stress or drugs. And we know that George Floyd had drugs in his system, enough to take the lives of multiple fully grown adult males. Add in a severe heart disease and now this tumor, and it paints a cause of death picture that all of a sudden becomes a whole lot more complex. And really that's what I want to focus on, because the justice system, the jury, came to a definitive conclusion that Derek Chauvin acted in malice and he did this thing, and he is solely responsible for George Floyd's passing. But obviously it seems a whole lot more gray than it does black and white. And here's the thing, this isn't just about Derek Chauvin. It's not like I'm some big Derek Chauvin simp or fan. No, it's about the entire system and how it was possibly weaponized to serve a political agenda.
It is absolutely infuriating to see this man rotting behind bars. This man probably has a family, wife, kids. It has nothing to do with his arrest, because the only thing that happened after his arrest is the police officers are less likely to do their jobs. Some crackhead is on the street doing drugs in front of a kid. Nah, I don't want to get involved in that. I don't want to be the next Derek Chauvin. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in prison. I'm just going to let it go. It's not worth it to me. If we live in a society where people who commit crimes are rewarded and police officers are punished, that is a far worse dystopia than George Orwell in 1984 ever predicted. We need to have law and order in this country. Look at El Salvador. They were the murder capital of the world until they had new leadership and they put an end to all that nonsense. If you commit a crime, you will get punished. We shouldn't be talking about defunding the police. We should be talking about giving them the opportunity to actually do what they're paid to do, which is their job. Being a police officer in a major U.S. city is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and it only gets harder after cases like this. He should not be behind bars. This was a public execution. Not to mention that last year in prison, he got shanked like 23 times. And that's why we all need to support this guy and let the rule of law take precedent once again in this country. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. Do you think that this new evidence will make a difference in his trial? Let me know. I'd love to know your opinion. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.
All this defunding the police talk scares the out of me.
She was big on defund the police.
Defund the police. We need to take a look at these budgets and figure out whether it reflects the right priority.
In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. In Minnesota, and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail.
Funding the police more. Instead of defunding the police, train them better, fund them more.